Zidane Danny, Electro Ninja here, and welcome back to Electro Ninja's Lab. We're talking about Percy Jackson in this universe, or in this episode, in this video, whatever the frick we're gonna call this video. Honest review of the entire Percy Jackson universe? Yeah, that seems accurate. Now, for those of you who are unaware, why the heck am I doing this? It is because I have just finished the entirety of the entire Percy Jackson universe up to this point in time, as in, as of recording this video, this is July 26th, 2023. So, if more books have come out by this point, then I've probably done a video specifically talking about that specific book. That means that I'm going to be talking about Chalice of the Gods eventually, and so on and so forth. But this video is specifically talking about everything that has happened over the entirety of this entire book universe series thing. Because, truthfully, there's a lot of books here. Are there more that I should probably read at some point? Yes. But as of this point in time, I have read every single book that is in the Percy Jackson universe, except for Demigods and Magicians. This is the one book that I have yet to read, and that's primarily because I can't find it on Audible. So, for those of you who are unaware, I have a lot of difficulty reading actual books, even something this small, and I just would rather do literally anything else. But I've listened through every single other book. So obviously, firstly, I started with the Percy Jackson books. All 5 of them, as well as all the spin-offs, which were the Greek gods, Greek heroes, and the one thing I'm forgetting. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of spin-offs that exist in the Percy Jackson universe. But I read through the entirety of the Percy Jackson books. Like if you go to Audible and you look up Percy Jackson and then you go into the series, I've read everything there. I've read everything for Heroes of Olympus. I've read everything for Kane Chronicles. I've read everything for Magnus Chase. And of course, I've read everything for Trials of Apollo. All of it. Every single book I have listened to or read it. The physical version, I have the physical versions of Heroes of Olympus, Kane Chronicles, and Magnus Chase, planning on getting the rest of them, just have other things that are taking priority at this point in time. But will I get them eventually? Yes. And like I said, the only book in this I've even read this single books, as in, Daughter of the Deep. Fantastic book, we'll get to it eventually. Is it in the same universe? I don't know. As well as Sun and the Star, the most recent book. I've read all of them. And it is a lot. It is a lot of books to just... And considering the fact that I did this over a very short amount of time, I think I started last year, and finished this year. So maybe I might have started a little bit later. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that I read through all of, I think I read through Skandar before I read through, any of Percy Jackson. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's when I started. So, keep that in mind, that it's been about it took me a good amount of time, but at the same time, really not that much time to get through the entire series. And I've been doing a lot of other things, and I read through all of Trials of Apollo, Heroes of Olympus, Heroes of Olympus. So I read through Magnus Chase, Trials of Apollo, and obviously Daughter of the Deep and Sun and the Star. As I think all of that was either in June or July this year. So yeah, needless to say, I've read a lot of them. The longest part of this journey was probably the beginning of Heroes of Olympus, as well as the beginning of Kane Chronicles, just because of the fact that when I started reading those, their first few books did not exist on Audible. So I had to actually read through the physical versions, and as you guys are all aware, I'm not the fastest reader. But I can listen to Audible at 2 times speed. Weird, I know. So that's yeah. So that's why it took me so long. But I do have to say that I absolutely love these books. Now, you may be wondering, okay, so why'd you read through the entire series? Because I've been meaning to read it for literal years. I first heard about Percy Jackson in high school. I think the first time I heard about it was before this channel even existed. Um, it might have even been after the channels existed. I had heard like little glimpses and pieces of it, um, and I really started to hear more about it as Son of the Star was starting to be announced and stuff like that. And I was like, I really should read this before the TV series comes out, because I had heard through the grapevine that there was a TV series in development. This was before any announcements had been made. I don't even think that I think just the announcement that they were working on it had been announced. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to read through the entire Percy Jackson universe before the Percy Jackson series releases at all. So I did that. And I do have to say that I really enjoyed it. I think that it's kind of funny. I've gotten into a lot more of the books that my generation grew up with in the past few years. I got into Artemis Fowl in really recently. Like, I think I started reading that shortly before Skandar came out. And then Percy Jackson was recently, and obviously in high school I read through the Harry Potter series. It might have been before high school, but the point is I did read through that around that time, which is a lot later than people would expect. Because obviously the movies were coming out, the books were coming out, and yet for some reason I had never heard of it. I had heard about the movie for Percy Jackson back when that came out, but I'd never really decided to actually sit down and watch it. I had seen videos about it and stuff like that, and then I was just like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to watch the movie, and then both movies, and then I'm going to read through the entire series. And oh my gosh, that was probably a big mistake. I think that, so first off, let me talk about the movies. If you haven't read the books or you haven't watched the movies, watch the movies first. Are they bad? Yes, but at the same time, they are at their best when you haven't read the book. Because there is so much that is different between Percy Jackson the movie and Percy Jackson the book. Personally, I think that the first movie was actually a well-made, it was a well-done movie. Was it Percy Jackson? No, but it was still a decent job. Just obviously they took a lot of ideas from Percy Jackson and Greek gods in general, and they went with it. It was a lot. It felt like a cinematic movie for that time. It made sense for that time, but at the same time, it was not what I was. It was not Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson is very close to the correct mythology, so there's that. And from that, I then watched the Sea of Monsters. Sea of Monsters is garbage. Like, even before I read the books, I was just like, I watched through the movie and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. I cannot describe how bad I consider this movie. And for the record, I am a film major. I have been, or I was working on getting a film major. Am I still going to do that? We'll see. But the point is, I was, around the time that I watched the movie, I was already surrounded by film. I was looking at a lot of different films, trying to understand what was good, what was bad about all these different films. And then I watched this movie and I thought, this is garbage. This is legitimately garbage. I do not know how they made this because it was so bad. So there's that. And then I read the books, and I do have to say that I really enjoyed them. One of the big things that I do have to say about especially Percy Jackson, the first books, it felt like it was a new taking a lot of Greek mythology, which I had heard a little bit about before this point. I've always been like a cultural nerd as sorts, looking into different cultures and stuff like that. So I had heard a lot about about Greek mythology beforehand, and the ideas, especially with reading Percy Jackson, I was already starting to look into the story of Perseus, and I was noticing that they took a lot of those details in the first few books. And they did the same thing with a lot of these different stories, is they took the monsters that Perseus or Hercules or Jason himself did in their specific when they actually went through their journeys, and Percy, Jason, and the rest of the heroes actually went through this. I don't know much about the original time that in Greek mythology where Apollo became human. I don't know very much about that yet, but I imagine that a lot of that has a lot of similarities to that of Trials of Apollo, and it's very interesting. On top of the fact that they were able to talk about like some very seriously very bad villains, with that of Nero and Caligula with Trials of Apollo, and make it very clear these are very bad people. And I kind of love that. I do have to say that Trials of Apollo was probably my favorite, even though it made me cry the most. Legitimately, when Jason dies, yeah, sorry, spoilers, there are going to be spoilers in this video. When Jason dies in Trials of Apollo, I legitimately cried. I was like, no, this has got to be a fake out. This has got to be a fake out. They're going to do something. They're going to make it so that, no, he's actually still alive somehow. It just never happened. And these things have consequences. And they've kind of been, like, the first Percy Jackson itself, that really didn't have too much death in it. There wasn't like these huge, massive sacrifices. Yes, they happened, but it wasn't like the most that we saw was frickin' the main bad guys, like the bad guys dying. That was the biggest death that we had seen. In Heroes of Olympus, Leo's death is a fake out, and it's just like, what? Like, these things don't have consequences, is what you're seeing through all of this. And then like, obviously there are certain things like, in Heroes of Olympus, with Percy losing his Curse of Achilles, that that was something that was like, oh, somebody could actually die in this. Maybe it will be Percy. Or also, maybe he won't die. Maybe it's more likely that he's not going to die because of this. Because by losing that, he doesn't have that one weak point. Obviously, other characters had died throughout the Percy Jackson books and Heroes of Olympus, but a lot of them were minor characters. But Apollo was the first one where it was like, this is one of the main characters. This is the first person that you meet. This is the first person that you are seeing through the eyes of, besides Percy, is dead. He's just dead permanently. He is gone. He has sacrificed himself for the good of his friends, and he is gone. And that hurts a lot, to just be blatantly honest. And granted, I read through Magnus Chase before I read through Trials of Apollo, and obviously Magnus is dead. And a lot of characters die in that series permanently, but this was the first time where it was like a character that you knew, a character that you had seen through his eyes was just gone. And that hurts like hell. And I kind of love it. Like I said, like, obviously with Magnus Chase, he plays it out as a joke. Then he died. I used to like ending stories like that and stuff like that. But he was very clear. Yes, I died, but this is not the end obviously it's not the end of the story, because he's obviously going to continue his story. And that's because they are dealing with the Valhalla aspect of it. And I love that they're dealing with that. Okay, so obviously, in the world of the Greeks and the Romans, and at this point the Egyptians, All of these are living people who are going around and going on these quests. Percy and Jason and everyone else from the Greek and Roman sides, they are going on adventures across the globe to find their friends, or trying to do different things. They are, and they are living, or they are getting, if they die, they are dead for good. And that's dangerous. Meanwhile, there's Magnus Chase, where he dies right at the beginning, and he freaking knows that we see him die multiple times throughout the entire story of the quest, to the fact that even Alex cuts his head off at one point. Which we get the brutal idea of having a garrote wire cut your head off, and that's just disturbing, but at the same time, holy crap, I love it. Especially, like I said, Magnus Chase is probably one of my favorite ones because of the relationship between Magnus and Alex. That feels a lot more real than, say, the Annabeth and Percy one, because obviously they had been developing feelings for each other pretty much the entirety of the first Percy Jackson book series. And they continued to fall in love with each other little by little throughout that entire time, as well as we got to see their relationship unfold as they became partners at the end of it, and continued on with that throughout Heroes of Olympus, as well as pretty much any of the other spin-offs that were dealing with them when they were in Magnus Chase, as well as in Demigods and Magicians, which I know I haven't read yet, but as well as a little bit in Trials of Apollo and Sun and the Star. We got to see their relationship as it unfolded, but and the same thing goes for a little bit with Nico and and Will in Sun and the Star, as well as at the end of Heroes of Olympus. Obviously, we got to see their relationship blossoming, but we didn't see too much of it. It was like, yeah, it's whatever. We see that. We see that where that's going, and no big deal. It's like, yeah, clearly we know where this is going. This is going to be fun, and they have a good relationship later on. But Magnus Chase and Alex, they're a really interesting relationship because they really don't like each other at the beginning. They're two friends that bully each other almost constantly, and Alex is just a whole bag of cats. I kind of love them, but just the idea of Alex as a character is just one of the most fun characters, and on top of the fact that it's kind of an interesting factor because this was the first book that really dealt with the LGBT community. Like, obviously, so at this point in time, Heroes of Olympus was the first one that really dealt with it because they had had some gay characters. They hadn't had any trans characters at this point. Apollo, obviously, Apollo is Apollo. We're not dealing with that right now. King Chronicles didn't really deal with that too much, but Magnus Chase really delved deep into that idea because here's this character who is really struggling to deal with the fact that some days he's a he and sometimes she's a she, and it was really interesting to see that, especially from an outside perspective of someone who considers themselves to be a straight person, straight man who is, and possibly isn't even thinking about a relationship at this point in time, and yet slowly starts to develop feelings for this person. And then one of my favorite lines near the end of the last book is, "I just got kissed by a dude. How do I feel about that? Screw that. I got kissed by Alex Levesque." I love this. And it's a really cute thing. Like, obviously, that's not how it's going to be for every single person. As I've said before, I am a straight man, and I do not plan on dating anyone who is male any time of the year. I am that kind of person. However, I do have friends who are like that, and seeing that as these are two people who truly love each other, and despite the things that they see and they are uncertain of things, when it really comes down to it, they really do love each other. And I love that. I love that for them. like I said, Magnus Chase is one of my favorite of the series, especially because it's kind of in a weird area, and I do like Sun and the Star. I can talk about that for ages, especially considering the fact that they are constantly fighting and stuff, and there's a lot of tension with that. And I do love that series. I do love that book. Maybe I'll talk about that as like a full length video at some point, but yeah. I also have to say I love Kane Chronicles, and uh, the whole relationship there with obviously the two Kane siblings are dealing with the fact that each of them has a crush, and they're trying to figure out how the hell they're supposed to deal with that. With, yeah, freaking Sadie being in love with two guys who turn into one guy, and it's just like, I don't know how I feel about this. That's how I feel with the Sadie relationship, and the same thing kind of happens with I'm forgetting what his name is, but Carter. With Carter and his girlfriend, kind of like, obviously he loves her before he has a crush on her before he actually meets the actual version of her, and then she's like, "What? I do not know you." And it's kind of a fun little situation there. I love dealing with that drama, and then when they actually do start to actually talk to each other, it's really fun to see their relationship develop in a new and spectacular way. Because obviously Carter is going to love her no matter what, but she's not going to necessarily fall in love with him right away. But eventually they do grow to fall in love. It's cute. It's really, really cute. And Trials of Apollo is like the one series that really doesn't discuss relationships at all. Like, considering the fact that Apollo is like one of the most bisexual, pansexual people in the entirety of Greek mythology, you'd expect him to be going after a lot of people, and yet he doesn't, like, at all. And he almost becomes a completely different person throughout the entirety of this series, throughout that entire series, as he's being Lester. And sure, he does fall in love with a character, with what's her name, but obviously that never goes anywhere. It's not gonna go anywhere, and he moves on. He never gets in a relationship throughout the entirety of the series. Sure, he does deeply care about Meg, but it's more of like a father-daughter type of situation rather than a romantic situation. Same thing, and we also get to see him and his reactions with his children, his actual children, and it's a lot of really cute moments, especially with the whole situation with him seeing Nico and Will together, because he doesn't care. He's like, do you, whatever, I don't care. And he's happy for them. He's happy that they both found someone that they deeply care about. And like I said, it's very cute. It is a very cute moment getting to see in Trials of Apollo all of those little details. And like I said, there's a lot that I love about these series, but there is one more thing that I really do want to talk about, and that is religion in the Percy Jackson universe. One of the big things throughout this entire series is they don't really talk too much about religion, whether it's in the Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Norse mythology, Egyptian mythology, whatever they're talking about. Even in the sci-fi stuff, they never once actually talk about they never once really delve deep into Christianity or Judaism or Muslim or any other major religion that is currently in our world. They don't talk about Buddhism. They don't talk about Hinduism. None of them. Except that they kind of do. In Percy Jackson, at the very beginning of the book, Percy, when he first realizes that Greek gods are real, he says, does that mean that God exists? And clearly he doesn't want to go too much in depth with that, and he says, and Dionysus says, that's a theological debate that we're not really in the position to talk about right now. And it's basically a hand wavy, I'm not prepared to actually delve into this situation. They don't actually go back and talk about any of that until it's through Magnus Chase and a Muslim character. And I absolutely love how it's dealing with it, because the Muslim character in question is this character who is a Valkyrie. She is literally one of Odin's chosen to go out, find people who have died valiantly in battle, and bring them to Valhalla to train for the rest of time to eventually become a hero when Ragnarok happens. And she's one of the main characters, but she is still Muslim despite all of that. And they really they talk a little bit about Muslim culture and stuff like that. And it's pretty small. It's very small amount. Like, he doesn't quite know, I don't think he necessarily knew everything about Muslim culture, so he tried to not step on any toes. He would basically talk a little bit about it, but one of the big things that they say is, in my eyes, the Norse gods aren't gods. No, none of these gods are gods. They are just very powerful people. But there is one God. There is a God above all who controls everything. And I don't know if what I believe is the absolute truth, but I have to have faith that it is. And it's such an impactful moment, because I think about it, and the same thing could have been said for a Christian character who is dealing with all of these multiple characters, all of these different gods. It would be confusing. It would be very, very strange to be dealing with a situation where you're suddenly surrounded by hundreds of different gods that have been from different cultures all over the world, to suddenly be wondering, is my God real? Is my God really real? And but one thing that you could remember is that these gods are God with a lowercase g. They are not the true God of this world. I have to have faith that mine is, especially later on when you're realizing that there are multiple different gods from multiple different cultures. It's an interesting factor. And I love that. I love that they are able to deal with this situation, especially in a way that is very different from what we would expect. Like, considering the fact that this is a American writer who lived through 9/11, the fact that he chose a Muslim character to be the one to say this, it's honestly insane to think about. That is the kind of thinking that he put into this. And truthfully, I don't know what Rick Riordan's religion is. I don't care, honestly. But I do think that he chose Muslim for a very specific reason. And I think that the reason for that is that a lot of people, especially in our modern world, have a lot of preconceptions about Muslim society as a whole. And it's not great. It is not good in any means. But he chose this character to kind of connect us. To show that no matter what religion you believe in, Magnus is an atheist. And obviously Sam is Muslim. But a lot of what she says could be translated to Christianity. And it's a very interesting factor. What exactly that means, it depends. We'll have to wait and see exactly what they're going to go in that direction eventually. They may decide that maybe there will be an actual Christian character that actually strongly believes in this stuff. But I think that the reason that they didn't really go that direction is because a lot more of the characters are Christian. Um, because Nico D'Angelo is Catholic. Like, it's specifically mentioned in Apollo that, in Trials of Apollo, that Nico D'Angelo is a gay Catholic man. And personally, I feel like if all of the characters that we see throughout the Percy Jackson universe, more of them are Christian or along those lines, rather than being, like, in a different religion. Maybe some characters might be Buddhists, some might be Hindus, but it's a really hard situation to deal with when you're dealing with these religions, especially if you don't know that much about it. So it's interesting to see how he handled it. Is it gonna be very interesting as we continue? Who knows? But I'm needless to say, I'm really excited to see what he has in store for us, especially considering the fact that, like, I think Daughter of the Deep is in this universe. Considering the fact that that is a sci-fi book series, possibly series, maybe it's just going to be one, but considering that that is a sci-fi book, you would think that it wouldn't be connecting into this Greek and Roman mythology, but I do think that it's possible. It is definitely a possibility that they are planning to go in that direction, with, obviously, once Percy Jackson and Chalice of the Gods happens, maybe we're going to start dealing with a lot more stuff in, well, California, because that is also where she is. Maybe at some point, Percy is just going to be swimming in the ocean, just trying to have a little bit of fun. He's talking to animals, and then he sees, like, this giant deep sea submarine lower than it should be, so he goes and checks it out, and bada bing, bada boom, it's freaking the Nautilus, and that's a lot of fun. I don't want to go too in depth with Daughter of the Deep because it's a very different story. Because while a lot of the other ones are dealing really well with different mythologies and stuff like that, this is basically taking another book written by a completely different author, to basically continue their story, but in a modern world. Is it going to be canon? I don't know. I don't want to guess because I don't have any theories. Besides the fact that I think that I know how they're going to at some point interact if it is canon. And that's it. That's honestly all that I have at this point in time. But I would be really excited to see a lot more from this whole universe because, truthfully, it looks like there's going to be a lot more coming our way. Obviously, we have the continuation of the Percy Jackson series with Percy Jackson 6, Chalice of the Gods, but it also, which I'm imagining that's going to have 5 books, but then there's also From the World of Percy Jackson, which is including, obviously, The Sun and the Star. Is that going to continue the story of Magnus Chase or the Kane Chronicles? I don't know. Is that going to be delving into the Reed Riordan universe? I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot with that is just really complicated. To be just blatantly honest, I don't know what the rest of this series has in store for us. And I know that a lot of the some Percy Jackson fans are like, no, don't read Reed Riordan. That stuff is not canon whatsoever, blah, 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 blah. I mean, he considers it possibly canon, so I don't see a reason why not to go check it out. Am I going to do a video talking about the entire Reed Riordan universe? Probably not. I might talk about, like, the different series throughout the Reed Riordan books, but there's a lot of them, so it may take a while. I do have one that I've already got my series planned for that, but I have other series that are kind of taking priority right now, like Fireborn. If you guys have checked out my tweet recently, that's gonna be a future topic, as well as the spin-off there. And obviously I'll talk about Chalice of the Gods when that comes out. I have other books, I have other series that I have to talk about at some point, including continuing the miraculous stuff. Oh my gosh, I am so behind on that. But anyways, guys, Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, leave your thoughts and theories down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. But on.